for quite some time in the country. Ruto housing plan, and this is what we have on the front page of Daily Nation. The good, the bad and ugly of this, the controversy surrounding this, real estate developers biggest winners as workers and employers to feel the pinch. This is President William Ruto's agenda. It is within the finance bill on this whole issue. There's a lot that is yet to be dissected on this, but I don't know what you feel about this, because Kenyans have diverse views on this whole housing plan issue.
Zain, I think if we begin with just how the Daily Nation has done due diligence to this story, they've given us the good and the bad. And as much as there's a lot of good, the bad still seem to be what Kenyans are weighing at, and it's become more of an emotional issue rather than something many have put so much reason into. And the more the government tries to explain it, the more complicated it becomes.
Correct.
And the more Kenyans are really staying away from it and really not accepting it. So I don't know how the Ruto administration is going to change tact in terms of just reconfiguring communication around this housing, because as things are, the more they talk,
it appears that the message really isn't getting home. Perhaps whatever they intend for the message to be really is changing by the time it is arriving to Kenyans. What else do we have here? There's a story here. Salon visit ending in rape and murder of a university student. Life cut short. It's a story about a lady called Anne who was preparing to report back to university the next day. This was happening. She's from a family in Tharaka Nithi County. So it's a quite unfortunate story here. You can find that on the second page of the Daily Nation. And we'll not get much deeper into it. Also on the third page, I aim to motivate women, says Boda Boda grandma, you know.
Interesting.
This is
how old is she? 62?
She's 62. She's called Anna Nyaboke, who's seen it all. She's lived the life of hard knocks and is not afraid to roll down her sleeves and get her hands dirty in order to provide for herself and her loved ones. It's quite an inspirational kind of a story.
Stories we'd
a
love to see.
62-year-old Boda Boda rider?
Why not? If she's fit, why not really go out there and do her due diligence to put food on the table?
Indeed. Mother's Day celebration continuation. Then there is also this particular issue, Azimio threatening to quit talks if key concerns are not addressed. Yesterday we did see the leaders there in their press statement. They are saying that they're giving the government a 6-day ultimatum. That's to President William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza Alliance to address their concerns that they had raised by the bipartisan talks team, including, by the way, the cessation of interference with the Jubilee Party, or they will deem the talks to have collapsed and resort to other actions. So this is another development that is quite interesting in the political circles.
And you've just listened to Vincent Tudor's story, and it seems like the more things try to change, the more they stay the same. So possibly it's time for both sides of the political divide maybe to just sit down and try and hash things out, if that can be possible. Because it seems now
But there's still a lot of issues in contention, especially now that you're bringing the issue of Jubilee Party and, you know, the Azimio team saying that there is, you know, that involvement by the Kenya Kwanza team to try and dismantle the Jubilee Party. So this is, again, a new, you know, knock in this whole talks that, you know, we're trying to see if there's going to be bearing any fruit.
Probably that's really what's rocking the boat inside the Azimio team.
Correct. We'll see how that goes. And maybe finally, Raila's hidden hand in Oduol ouster bid. It's a story here by Rushdi Ouda and Kasim Adinasi. It's a story about a plan which was set in motion on Friday last week at a meeting between Orengo and Raila. Phone calls from ODM party honchos and an array of secret meetings in Nairobi ahead of a county assembly special sitting to have sealed Siaya Deputy Governor William Oduol's fate, leading to his planned ouster. Is that what happened? This whole report here actually tries and capture that. Odinga is said to be displeased with the bad press his home county had been receiving following the fallout. It's more of an in-depth kind of a story and analysis of exactly what transpired on the ouster of the Siaya Deputy Governor William Oduol, and really whose hand was in this whole issue.
Is this a test of Raila's his popularity within his home
It
base.
It could be actually.
And is someone also trying to rock the boat in terms of seeing no peace where his
votes lie, his influence lies. That is something we would perhaps be trying to see as well. So this is what we had on the full page of, on the front page of the Daily Nation, much more deeper analysis of the situation on the housing plan. And let me see what we have on Business Daily. U.S. graft shocker in new trade deals with Ruto. Public officials charged with corruption offenses stemming from American-funded projects and investments in Kenya will be removed from office as Washington adopts a carrot and stick approach in its trade and financing deals with President William Ruto's government. The U.S. making some public details of the trade deals it's been thrashing out with President Ruto, revealing priority areas for investment and commerce, and also showing measures that Americans will take to protect their billions from officials with itchy fingers. This I'm sure we're going to get into as well, you know, the issue of
graft and how Big Brother deals with Africa in terms of when they give us something small, so they tend to dictate how these funds are going to be used. But then again, if you look at how Africa in general has dealt with corruption, then you get an understanding of how the Americans would be wary of where their money is going in terms of they're giving us billions of shillings to help ourselves. But unfortunately, in some instances, that money goes into people's pockets. And
unfortunately, it's a same script in many African nations.
Definitely.
Right. All right. Let's see what else perhaps what we have on the sidelines of the Business Daily report as well. Kenya reveals 469 billion oil investment roadmap as well. Kenya would need at least that amount of money. That's 469 billion for commercial oil production in the Turkana wells if it's to realize its petrodollar dream amid the exits of exploration firms. This is after a 9-year wait. The country now hopes to start large-scale production of between 80,000 and 120,000 barrels daily in 3 years, according to Energy Cabinet Secretary Davis Chirchir, who told yesterday the Senate that Kenya needs that amount of money to develop infrastructure at the South Lokichar Basin, which has estimated oil reserves of, listen to this, Leila, 504 million barrels before production starts. I don't know. Okay, I don't know if this is something we should be excited about as Kenyans. Honestly, I haven't read much about the oil reserves.
We could be excited only if we look at how much the rest of Africa, which is possibly our competition base, produces. For example, are we in a regional sphere like what Nigeria is producing at the moment? Uganda is also looking at oil and as well as down south in Angola. So possibly until we can able to see those numbers, 504 million barrels seems big, but then,
All right. Let's see what we have on Taifa Leo. Huduma. This is another big issue, by the way. Mabilioni kuungua.
So, serikali itatumia mabilioni kuanzisha kitambulisho cha kidijitali cha kitaifa hata kabla ya kadi ya huduma namba iliyoanzishwa miaka 4 iliyopita kuanza kutumika, wakati ambao gharama ya juu ya maisha yamelemea mamilioni ya watu. Jana serikali ilitangaza kuwa Wakenya watakuwa na kitambulisho kipya cha kidijitali cha kitaifa kuanzia Septemba 16.
Wow. So now we had the whole Huduma number issue, and now we are told that we're going to have another digital card that will be an identifier.
I remember this administration was really against the Huduma number and the Huduma card as well. So I don't know what's different from what was there in the whole idea around the Huduma card. And it's quite unfortunate that we will be having all these so many cards as Kenyans, and we were hoping maybe they would bring it down to just one, and that one would be a significant part of who you are. But then let's see how government decides to go about it.
To roll out this project.
Will this be the next issue after the housing project? I will wait and see.
Do you feel like the government's perhaps chewing more than it can handle at this point, because you have all these things that they're trying to manage by introducing this new digital card? You still have the housing issue that you have to settle, trying to convince Kenyans, and then you have billions that you still want to push into creating this? I don't know, perhaps we'll be getting analysis from people who understand why the card issue might be important for Kenyans,
I think,
but we don't know yet.
I think the president has a vision for Kenya, a very ambitious vision for Kenya. Let's see, 1 year down the line, how things will be.
Correct. And finally, just on the front page of the East African, let me try and expand the paper. Kenya politics hurts common market dream. The latest spat with Uganda over milk exports lifts the veil on internal political intrigues that now threaten cross-border trade. Page 4 to 5 of the East African. This is our publication between the 20th and the 26th of May. It's a weekly publication of the East African. Well, this is one other story, and also Kenya and Uganda may jointly fund SGR project. I don't know if you've heard about that, Leila, and how that will work perhaps.
I hope this time around Uganda doesn't exit mid conversation like they did the first time around.
Right.
This conversation, Kariakoo market.
Yes.
This was a big issue in Tanzania last week. Business owners were really skeptical about taxes and extra taxes and more taxes, and they were like, you know what, we can close our businesses for a week and then we see how government will behave. So it took a real big conversation with the country's administration to get back, and there's people are looking at it in terms of also the democratic space in Tanzania and how Samia Suluhu Hassan has really opened up the space for Tanzanians to be expressive of their feelings towards government.
That's quite a different thing that they have witnessed. And so we have then Uganda, DR Congo in talks for free movement deal as well. As their President Museveni asking officials to stop asking for visas from Congolese citizens entering Uganda. And then also we'll be getting into that conversation as well. Sure. Free movement and trade as well, and services across African nations. Something that we've been talking about. Are we there?
And the free visa movement is also something Kenya is discussing with Somalia on a serious note.
Yes.
For both citizens from both countries to just travel across the borders with ease. And that brings the conversation around, is it time for Africa to really strictly start thinking about visa-free travel? Are we there yet?
Right. And finally, before I introduce my panelists, this is this story because we're going to get into it just briefly. It's on the Sudan civil war. Sudan's deadly war has offered criminals a gate pass to loot, a sign of developing lawlessness. Just last week, the UN said more than 17,000 tons of food stored in a World Food Programme warehouse in Khartoum had been looted, costing the agency about $13 million. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemning the incident, saying, and I quote, most, if not all, United Nations agencies and all our humanitarian partners have been impacted by the large-scale looting, end of quote. However, since the war began in April 15th, the biggest threat has always been on the country's lucrative mineral resources, Leila. So this is where we are on the issue of this Sudan civil war. We'll get into that, and I know you will have a lot on that because you've been following up on that. But just to introduce our panelists this morning, I'm not alone in studio. We do have two very great guests. Allow me to introduce them. Dr. Abdi Wahab Sheikh Abdi Samad, who's the chair of the Institute of Horn of Africa Strategic Studies. He's a Pan-Africanist and a researcher as well. Very good morning. Good to see you, as well as Nasongo Muliro, who's a foreign policy and